This is the Pencil Pushers Podcast, a show, a place, a space dedicated to the amazing world of the hand-drawn arts and the people that make it happen. Each episode, we sit down with all kinds of creatives to explore their process, journey, and the amazing work they bring to the world. If this sounds like your kind of place, listen, like, subscribe, and join the conversation. Quick thing before we jump in, this episode is brought to you by Musgrave Pencil Company, and I couldn't be more excited about it. Musgrave's been making pencils right here in the USA for 110 years. If you want to grab some of your own, head to musgravepencil.com and use code PENCILPUSHERS, all caps, for 10% off. It even stacks with their new customer discount. Okay, on with the show. Welcome, folks, to another fine episode of the Pencil Pushers Podcast, where we celebrate the love of the hand-drawn arts. I'm, as always, your humble host, Mike Rosado, and today I'm excited to be joined by illustrator, designer, and entrepreneur Andrew Fairclough. Andrew is known by many for his richly textured illustration style, a mixture reminiscent of pulp sci-fi comics, retro band posters, and magazine ads. His years as a commercial artist have hooked him numerous big-name clients, including Nike, Adidas, Rolling Stone, ESPN, Billabong, and Jack Daniels. But beyond his illustration career, as the founder of True Grit Texture Supply, an online haven for any modern creative whose brushes and textures have become go-to tools for illustrators and designers looking to bring the warmth and character of traditional media into their digital work. In this conversation, we'll explore Andrew's creative journey, the story behind True Grit, what it takes to balance life as both an illustrator and entrepreneur, and why craftsmanship still matters in an increasingly automated world. So without further ado, I invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Andrew. Andrew, welcome to the podcast, sir. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. We were chatting a little bit about, before we got pressing record, about your history, and you're in Australia or in Sydney. And one of the things that I mentioned is that I really wanted to dig into you as the artist. I probably want to spend about maybe 60% of the time talking to you about that a bit. And one of the things that I really love, first of all, I love the country, Australia. I've never been there before. But I love the culture. I love the music, the music, the sort of like culture of music, art, surf and sand. And so I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about like your childhood. What was that like? Where did you grow up? Were you born in Sydney? Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
I didn't grow up in Sydney. I grew up on the northeast coast of New South Wales, in like a little beach town. I was originally born sort of just outside of Sydney, but my folks moved up there when I was 5 or so. So I just grew up at the beach and swimming and eventually surfing and skateboarding and all that kind of good stuff, which, as a kid, you probably don't appreciate anywhere near as much as you should, but I do now. And that kind of, probably informed a lot of the things I got into art-wise and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I would imagine that, and it's interesting about Australia, if I'm correct, and tell me if I'm not, but most of the people, live on basically the outer perimeter of the country, right? And so most of it is mostly bushland, that most people don't live around. So the culture of surfing and that type of thing is very, very common. I mean, I would imagine it's probably uncommon for people to not like pick up a surfboard at some point in their life.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. But yeah, I mean, yes, a huge chunk of the population do live on the coast.
Yeah.
And I don't know what percentage it is, but, like it would be a very small portion of people who don't live within 2 hours of the coast, I would say.
Right.
And yeah, the center of Australia is largely uninhabited apart from a couple of smaller cities and, a lot of indigenous communities and national parks and stuff like that. But I guess, yes, compared to somewhere like the States, the percentage of people who have tried surfing is really high.
Yeah.
But it depends if you're talking California or, you know, Idaho.
Yeah, for
You're
sure.
going to get some pretty different stats there. But, you know, I really noticed when I lived in LA, um, you know, people in surfers in LA would complain a lot about the crowds and how aggressive it was. And I just found it completely laughable compared to Australia, where, you know, there's some spots you can go and the standard of surfing is so incredibly high.
Wow.
Like 8-year-old kids have already got, you know, 5-year contracts with major surf brands and stuff like that. It's just like, it's out of control. Like as an adult,
Wow.
who's not, you know, a great surfer,
Yeah.
it's like incredibly infantilizing to go surfing in some of those places, which is why I kind of like surfing in LA quite a bit, because you know, I felt like
Yeah.
I was, you know, I wouldn't say I'm bragging to say that, you know, paddling out at, I don't know, Malibu or Topanga on any given day in LA, like I was,
Yeah.
you know, I could hold my own, but you take me to like Snapper Rocks, on the Gold Coast of Australia,
Uh-huh.
and I'm just getting destroyed out there.
That's amazing. So you started to, when you were in New South Wales, you were able to kind of capture some of that culture there, and you know, at that point, were you starting to get, you know, a glance into the art culture of that as well? I mean, what was the scene like? You know, what was the thing that kind of got you into the creative aspect of yourself?
I I already really loved drawing as a kid. Like I just took to it from a very young age,
Yeah.
and neither of my parents were creative, or they would say that they're not creative. There's, you know, I think like my parents and some of their siblings were all creative in their own ways, but they definitely encouraged myself and my brother to draw and just explore. And I think my, you know, my primary school teachers recognized from a pretty early age that I was really into drawing and I was pretty good at it.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I was pretty good at copying photographs out of Encyclopedia Britannica at a young age with colored pencils. If you wanted a drawing of a famous church on a hillside in Switzerland, I was the kid to ask for that for
Right.
sure,
Yeah.
or a, you know, some kind of exotic fish.
Yeah.
Um, so
And by the way, you know, for the younger generation that's listening to this, Encyclopedia Britannica is the internet for back in the day.
correct, yes.
That'll be
Sorry.
your starter. Then you can go look
Yeah,
it up.
yeah. I'm old enough that like the Gen Z
Yeah, yeah.
artists watching this are just like,
Right.
what is this guy
They'll only
talking
know it
about?
by, you know, seeing it on TikTok somewhere.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Yeah, reference books, picture books. I would just like endlessly sit there and just be like, oh, that's a cool drawing. I'm going to try and draw that myself.
Yeah.
Um, but then it really took off when I discovered skateboarding. Um, and you know, without uh, aging myself too much, you know, I was, you know, in the very late '80s, that sort of um, that first wave, like big boom of skateboarding after sort of skinny skateboards, when
Yeah.
vert skating and bowl skating took off, and the birth of street skating. That was when it kind of just got on my radar, and it was everything from the art, like the, you know, for a 10-year-old kid, like the art on the boards themselves was just like
Sick. Yeah.
visual crack for the mind.
Yeah.
And the fashion, the music, the videos, just everything about it really appealed to me. And so, you know, then my subject matter became like, well, I'm going to like draw my own, get my markers and pencils out and, you know, redraw every Powell Peralta skateboard and every,
Oh yeah.
you know, the Christian Hosoi and every Santa Cruz deck and every Vision deck.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, draw my own skateboard wheels. It was like that was my whole thing. And I kind of remember there was an Australian skateboarding magazine called Skate and Life, which is like
Nice.
hilariously twee now that I think about it. But they had I don't know, they had like a mailing contest, like, do a drawing on an envelope, send it in,
Oh yeah.
and
Nice.
you'll win a bunch of videos and maybe some skate shoes or something like that. And I did that and I won. And like I got
Ooh.
published in this magazine as like, I don't know, a 12-year-old.
Wow.
And yeah, the prize never showed up for a really long time. And
Are
I
you
would
serious?
wait by the mailbox for like, we're talking 6 months. I would
Right.
like wait by the mailbox every afternoon after school. And I think my mum eventually felt so sorry for me that she
Right.
like went full Karen and called them out. Like she must have looked up the magazine, looked at the masthead and was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm going to give these people a piece of my mind. And she must have called them up and was like,
Right.
you've got a 12-year-old kid here who waits by the mailbox every day.
Right.
And they sent me so much stuff. I must have got like 10 VHSs.
Oh my God.
Like T-shirts, socks,
Wow.
like whatever I've worked at skate magazines and, snowboarding companies and stuff. There's always a room full of just swag,
Stuff. Yeah.
just stuff to give away. And I think somebody must have walked in there and just gone, oh God, we got to make Karen go away. Just like put it all in a box and send it out. So I was happy. Thanks, Mom.
Wow. So, winning that kind of prize, I mean, obviously it's one thing to just be in a magazine like that at 12 years old, but, then getting the reward of like, I mean, obviously mom helped, right? Which, I think all good moms are there to have those moments. I mean, I'm sorry, you can call that Karen. You can just say that, hey, it's a good way of like, standing up for your kid.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So at this point, you start getting into high school and you're, sort of trying to figure out what it is that you want to do at this point, right? And parents are starting to think like, okay, what does Andrew have plans for in the future? Was it kind of a classic story where parents are like, okay, son, what do you want to do with your life? Or were they pretty lenient? Where was it heading at that point?
Well, it actually was heading in that direction because I guess the school district, for lack of a better description, it kind of had like they would have these days where kids from different schools would get sort of with special interests or talents or whatever it may be, they'd kind of get them together from all different schools and just do full day workshops. And myself and another friend, we kind of got pulled into the visual arts program for that. So once a month, I think we would go to another school for a day and have like a bunch of specialized art instructors, and we would learn life drawing and learn to draw with different materials like charcoal and stuff like that. And that was, I actually think I was still in primary school when that was happening.
Okay.
And then
what is primary school for
elementary school?
So elementary school. Yep. So we go up to 5th grade and then it goes to middle school, which would be 6th, 7th, and 8th.
So it was 6th grade that we were doing that in. Yeah, 6th grade. And then I think kind of there was maybe a bit of that in 7th grade as well. But, once, 7th grade to 12th grade is just high school, I guess, for us. But it's kind of junior high school for the first 3 years, and the last 3 years you're considered a senior. But, like got to high school, immediately you're doing at least like 2 dedicated art classes, 2 dedicated music classes, and 2 dedicated like technical drawing and sort of architecture adjacent classes per year. So I was per week, I should say. So I was like right into all of that, like anything creative, maths and science. Like, I don't know, I liked playing with chemicals as much as the next guy, but like I was pretty into just the drawing and painting and learning about the history of art and stuff like that too. I was just super into it. I loved it. So that really had a big influence. And like just being in an art department if that makes sense. Like just surrounded by all these rooms where art was being made.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, my mum, she worked in advertising for the local newspaper.
Okay.
And
what was her position?
Like advertising sales.
Okay. Yeah.
And so after school sometimes, if she's working late, so I would go and I would go to like music lessons or whatever, or go skateboarding, and then go and hang out at the newspaper for waiting for her to finish work for half an hour, and I would just hang out with the graphic designer there. And this is like at the very early stages of digital design, desktop publishing.
Right.
So a lot of the newspaper was still put together like paste up, basically. Paste up, bromide cameras, all of that sort of stuff. And this guy, he had a stack that little cabinet in the background there. He had a stack of like A1 sized clip art books as high as that.
Yeah.
With probably, 500 pages per book, all themed. And like that for some reason, had a huge influence on me. Like just that old school pen and ink.
Yeah.
It was everything from like really, classic Sunday funny cartoon style right through to, more figurative, realistic pen and ink drawings.
Yeah.
Everything.
Right.
Like, because it was, it was a small town. So, the local travel agent, they didn't have a graphic designer or pay a graphic designer to make their ad. They would call up my mum and say, hey, we want like a 2-inch by 4-inch ad. And she would take the order over the phone, and the graphic designer and maybe a copywriter would go away and throw something together, and they'd throw some clip art in it, and that was it.
Right.
But yeah, that had a big influence on me. And then at the same time, I would religiously spend every spare moment I had in whatever local news agency wouldn't throw me out, and just like flick through various predominantly skateboarding magazines.
Yeah.
Because that was where the cool stuff was. And probably my favorite one was like Rad Magazine, which was out of the UK, Read and Destroy.
Yeah.
Because I was
wasn't there a Rad movie too?
Yes, which was filmed in Canada.
Okay.
So I was super into that. Because I was into BMX as well. Like,
I was too.
Where I lived was like, we have one of the best BMX tracks in all of New South Wales.
Am I wrong that there was a BMX movie that was made in Australia that was, what was that one
Nicole
called?
Kidman.
Yeah.
BMX Bandits.
Yeah.
It is
that's right.
Yeah. Like, I guess like, younger people obviously may not know about it, but like for anyone sort of born in the 80s, it was like, it was a huge influence over kids my age for sure. Like we all were immediately like, BMX looks like the coolest thing ever. And if you watch that movie again now, it's like, it's so wacky. But
I'm shocked by, because I was definitely more of a BMX guy than a skateboarder. And so I used to do like the races and stuff like that, and I used to love it. My brother and I were so into it. He got into skating too, but I stay with BMX biking. And I'm just shocked that skating is still so huge, but it doesn't seem like BMX biking is not. It's not nearly as popular as what it once was, which seems kind of strange to me. I mean, I guess maybe it partially has to do with the fact that there wasn't like a true like Tony Hawk of BMX biking that sort of took it into like video games as and became this sort of like massive. And plus, I guess the artwork probably had a massive influence on the popularity of that too, right?
Yeah, you're probably right.
You couldn't do these incredible illustrations on a bunch of metal bars like you can with a skateboard itself, right? You got this canvas that you've got to be able to create all kinds of stuff. And I had
Yep.
friends that would get like clean boards and just do their own artwork on the boards themselves. Um, I mean, maybe that's one of the reasons why, but man, what an awesome sport BMXing is.
Yeah. And like honestly, like as you say that, it makes me kind of realize like, oh yeah, BMX was my main thing too, because I
Yeah.
grew
Wasn't
up in an area that we didn't have a skate park.
right.
Like, me and my friends, we were like getting petitions to try and get the local council to build one, but we didn't have one. We were skating like car parks, street, like backyards. Occasionally somebody would have a
Yeah.
mini ramp or if you're really lucky, a vert ramp.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so BMX was way more my main thing because it was both transport to school
Hmm.
and the thing you did after school that was like where you got your adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
Um,
Were you doing
but
like freestyling and stuff like that too?
a little bit,
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit, a lot of
Yeah.
racing and dirt jumping and stuff.
Yeah.
But the skateboarding was where the art influence came from.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, and that was what was cool about Rad Magazine is that it was both. It was skateboarding and BMX.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
And that was kind of my gateway drug to skateboarding in a way because
Yeah.
I originally bought it for the BMX and then was like, oh my God, there's skateboarding as well. Like I got to
Right.
get into that. And
Right.
then the art side of it,
Hmm.
you're 100% right. That just made it so much more appealing.
Yeah.
Um,
And so what about when I look at your art now and things that I've read about you, it's clear that you also have this kind of like pulp comic, which I mean, if we're honest, you think about like somebody like Jim Phillips, and people of that ilk and his studio, the people that were sort of his acolytes, um, they were clearly, influenced to some degree by the sort of pulp sci-fi comic. I'm curious where that stepped in for you in terms of your fascination from an aesthetic point of view.
Probably, I mean, I don't know. I had comic books as a kid,
Yeah.
like we would go to I don't know, like what would you say, not estate sales, but like
Right.
yeah, like flea markets and
Yeah.
stuff
Flea
like
markets.
that.
You
And
got
there would always be like piles of 1960s and 70s comic books and even old like post World War II, like war graphic novels and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And I like, honestly, I never like comic aficionados will send hate mail for this, but I just never got into reading them. I was
Yeah.
just too obsessed with the art and
Uh,
the printing and
yeah.
the
The
just how
style.
nostalgic it all felt, the style of it, and it probably is because it's like quite adjacent to um the skateboarding style. I mean, I didn't know what was what really. Like to me,
Mhm.
it all just kind of felt like it was part of the same world,
Yeah.
whether it be sci-fi comics, detective comics,
Mhm.
skateboarding graphics,
Mhm.
or commercial clip art.
Yeah.
A lot of which had been drawn in the 50s and 60s. I
Sure.
wasn't aware of that, but that's probably the reality of all those books that I used to flip through after school. So I don't know, it all kind of felt like it was part of the same world, but then skateboarding made it cool
Mhm. Mhm.
because
Yeah.
it took those influences and, probably largely because, a lot of those artists were influenced by comic books and even, like mainstream artists like Stan Lee and
Yeah.
um, Steve Ditko and all your classic superhero comic artists, but they kind of made it their own.
Yeah.
And they really put a countercultural twist on it, and that made it feel dangerous
Yeah.
and therefore way cooler than comic books.
It's so true.
Um,
Yeah. It's interesting. You were just talking about like how when you think about skateboard art and, those, kind of picking up those old comics in flea markets and you almost get that immediacy of feeling that nostalgia factor. And, there's such an inherent kind of element to your work where it's clear you're trying to get that feeling out into the work itself, where you're getting that, and I've seen the videos of even how, cutting to a little bit maybe ahead of the story here, but uh how you at least initially came to like developing some of the textures and stuff through for True Grit and for your own work, where you're literally like, it's the way you create it is quite analog, where you're just scratching the shit out of it. You're rubbing it, you're stepping on it. And the nostalgia aspect of it, I wonder like where you see the nostalgia aspect of it coming into the work itself. What do you think that you know ethereal thing is? What do you think it is that creates that nostalgic feeling, even for a kid who didn't live back in those days?
I just think it's whatever you're exposed to at a young age. Like when you're 12 years old, um, even something that's like 10 years old feels like it was forever ago, right? Like
Yeah.
something from the 70s when I was growing up in the 80s was like, that feels old.
Right.
And in the same way that Gen Z now are, really obsessed with the 90s and
Right.
what it was like culturally then, and the idea of a time before technology and phones and the internet is just like fascinating to those kids. And I think like for probably our generation, like I'm Gen X,
Yeah, me too.
so it's probably the same thing for us. And like I I saw this, I think about this all the time, that like more time has now passed since Nevermind was released
I don't want to hear this.
than had passed since the Beatles' last record
Yeah.
when Nevermind came out.
Yeah, I know, it's wild. I think about like I think about where I saw the Beatles in high school. So I'm 50, and when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, I remember seeing the Beatles as like not like Three Stooges, because that was like 30s and 40s. I don't know if
Yeah,
you ever watched any of that stuff, um but it was definitely like a long time ago.
totally.
And you think about like, okay, they broke up in 1969, 70, somewhere around there. So we're only talking about like 20 years from the time of when they broke up to when Nevermind came out, which I think
It's
was
crazy.
90, 91, something like that. 20 years. And now, like to your point, we're 26 years into the 21st century. It's so strange.
It's crazy. You think back 20 years now to, I don't know, pick an album. I mean, even honestly, even Nevermind, I think Nevermind could be released today with probably different production values,
Yeah.
and it would be a huge hit record. It wouldn't be, the stars wouldn't all be aligned for this huge uprising and mainstreamification of an alternative rock scene
Yeah.
in top 40 radio or top 40 streaming or whatever it would be. But I think that record would sound very modern, or,
It
something
sounds
like,
incredible.
yeah, a band like Placebo,
Yeah.
like this sort of like not quite like alternate rock, not quite indie, not quite industrial.
Yeah.
Like the production value on those records from the early 90s is almost indistinguishable from now, I think,
Yeah.
to me anyway. But like, if I listen to, like when I first heard the White Album, not the White Album, Revolver,
Hmm.
in the early 90s, because I'd heard Kurt Cobain was like super into the Beatles, like that album sounded so old.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because the production technology had changed so much, the
Yeah.
songwriting had changed so much, and
Yeah.
so, but yeah, I mean, I guess like, I don't know, I talk to like, friends who have kids who are like 18, 19, and they're like, oh yeah, Nirvana sounds old. That's classic rock. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
all right,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is
cool.
pretty wild. With my wife and I, we have actually 12-year gap. She's 38, and so she's got younger kids. I'm full-time stepdad, and she and I are very much on the same page. We connected deeply on music, because I'm a huge music fan, drummer, love all kinds of music, and we have done a very, very effective job of full-on indoctrination of good good music. And our 12-year-old now is like, she loves all the new stuff. She loves knowing all the new songs, but she knows all the old stuff. She loves everything from Motown to classic rock to jazz. I mean, we're raising them right, man.
Yeah,
So it's good to have that. It's good to have that blend for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I
I'd
think
be
that's
curious.
important too,
It is.
and probably to bring it back to art, like probably also like there's a reason why when you go to art class in high school, they teach you about expressionism and cubism and
Yeah,
neoclassicism and all of that stuff, because it's important that you know where we came from to know where we're headed. So,
exactly.
um, yeah, I don't know. But, there's some people who for like, music's just background sound to them, and that's all it needs to be. But I don't know. I've never been like that. Um, I needed, uh, I needed to understand why, man. Why? Where did it come from?
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting. I'm getting ready to have Michael Dorrit on the podcast. Are you familiar with him?
I've heard the name. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the guy who he's got a book called Alphabet City. He's an incredible designer, illustrator. He designed the Knicks logo for the New York Knicks,
Oh
and
yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yep, yep.
And he's also done like like some of the classic Kiss albums. So he's a guy who's done a bunch of like classic rock albums. And going back to like art and culture, I think about the value of, I don't know, this makes me think about the nostalgia factor too, about how much we love vinyl records now. And when we were kids, like one of the best things about getting a vinyl record and holding it in our hands was being able to like look at the artwork. Right now we don't really get a chance to experience that. Kids don't really get a chance to experience that in sort of like a singular way. Now it's different with like music videos, of course, and social media. But I remember as a young kid growing up, dreaming about and fascinated by art, like even just like pulling out the sleeve of Michael Jackson's Thriller and seeing all of his drawings that he had of like portraits of him and Paul McCartney, or him doing stuff with like Thriller ghouls and goblins. And there's something just like amazing about seeing these different artists like actually creating it on their actual albums themselves. I mean, it's just incredible stuff. I love the connection between music and art in those kinds of ways.
Yeah, yeah. I 100% am on board with that. Like, I think my favorite one is Smashing Pumpkins' "Siamese Dream."
Mm,
I believe like Billy Corgan like created all of the collages and hand wrote in metallic paint pen all of the lyrics
did he?
on. Yeah, it's like
Okay.
it's incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I'm pretty sure he's credited as the designer or art director on the whole thing,
Okay.
and I believe the most of the collages were made by him, and I just like there's you just don't get that now, like that was such an immersive experience, even as a 5-inch by 5-inch CD
Hmm.
package.
Hmm.
It felt like something real that you could sit there, hang out in your bedroom, and like read through the liner notes, or if you were still into vinyl, have the the big vinyl sleeve, and it was just, I mean, for that reason, I've gone back and I've bought a lot of those sort of records of my
Oh yeah.
youth, like trying to get like proper original pressings and stuff like that, of some of those, because it's so nice to have those as, like, I guess, as a reminder of what influenced you when you were younger and
Yeah.
remember where you came from, but also just, I don't know,
Yeah.
we
It's
have an
a
attachment to things for some
yeah, and
reason. So,
they're works of art, they're
yeah,
works of art that you can keep right in your library, for $30 or something like that, that you can find at a used CD and vinyl record shop.
yeah,
And I do want to, obviously I want to talk to you about, I want to, jump to where your art really kind of came into doing a lot of band posters and stuff. But, if we could talk for just a couple of minutes about the in between part. I believe that, once you got out of high school, you started doing sort of like commercial work, and you were almost more like sort of a, um, not necessarily a graphic designer that was doing sort of like, you know, the top work of what the agency was asking for. You were just kind of doing more production type stuff. Is that the case? Like,
yeah, pretty much.
yeah.
I
So
mean,
walk. Mhm.
I studied business and like a tourism major
You did.
at school, largely because my careers advisor. So I guess to jump back to high school a little bit,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was super into art. Um, my careers advisor was also my basketball coach. He was like this
Oh, yeah.
amazing guy, and he was like, you're going to go to college and study graphic design. That is what you should do." And that was the plan. And then, sadly, he died very suddenly of an underlying health condition that he wasn't aware of. And we got a new careers advisor in my maybe
Mm.
second last or final year of high school, and she was just like, graphic design, why would you do that? Everybody wants to do that. Like, that's this, you're never going to get a job doing that. And I think because I
Wow.
grew up in a town where, youth unemployment and just employment in general was kind of, in these regional cities is a big consideration. I don't know, it kind of got to me a little bit, and I was like, well, I was like doing business studies and I wanted to travel as well. So I'd kind of been doing this I don't know, travel and tourism sort of undergraduate course as part of my final year of high school at the same time. And I was like,
Yeah.
maybe I'm going to go and do like a business and business degree with sort of marketing and tourism thrown in. And it was such a bad idea. I mean, I had a
Mm.
great time at college, and probably studying business taught me a lot. But yeah, once I got out, in like the thing that I thought I loved about travel, most of it was tied into like surfing and snowboarding,
Right.
wanting to travel the world doing those two things.
Yeah.
Um,
And doing art along
and
the way, or not necessarily?
I, yeah, I mean,
Did you know like, were you were you good at that point? I mean, were you objectively like, a good, could you see the writing on the wall that you had this talent at that point?
I mean, yes. I mean, like in my final year of high school, for the entire state, they have this thing called Art Express,
Yeah.
which is, you create a major work for your final year of high school and document it. And, the state school art board, they evaluate every work, and about 40 of them are selected to go on the road in a traveling art show. And mine was shortlisted. I wasn't selected for the final, but I got a red dot. Like, it was obvious that that was what I should have been doing, but I
Yeah.
didn't. And so, to save everyone a long, boring story, I just got sidetracked for a few years. I
Mhm.
went and worked for a snowboard travel company for a few
Nice.
years, realized that I hated doing that. And then I was, essentially a booking agent.
Right.
when I really,
So you weren't really traveling necessarily. You were
uh,
just,
I was doing it a little bit, but then I
yeah.
basically quit and I moved to Canada and went snowboarding for 2 years
Oh,
and
where'd you
just
go?
tried to, I lived in Canada, Canada, Whistler, just
Okay.
outside
Yeah.
of Vancouver.
Yeah.
Um, so, and that kind of changed things for me then, like I realized because I had my roommate, there,
Hmm.
he was Australian as well, but he'd
Oh
been
yeah. There's a
hired,
lot of Australians that do like a work study I forget what they call it, but like,
yeah,
is that what it's
working
called? Work
holiday
study?
visa.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, tons of Aussies in Whistler because, our ski resorts aren't great. So,
Right. Yeah.
we
My
all,
brother and I just did a road trip last year, and we went up to Banff. Um,
beautiful.
and like there were seemingly more Australians there than Canadians.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's not enough Canadian. I mean, the Canadian ski industry is so successful and has such a good
Yeah.
product.
Right.
The volume of tourism that goes in there,
It's
they couldn't
insane.
possibly ever sustain that with just Canadian
Right.
employment. So
Right.
it kind of works out really well for
Yeah.
them. And then they come here too
Hmm.
and hang out for a couple of years and work and study and do whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, my housemate at the time, Rich, he was the art director and of the local newspaper in Whistler,
Okay.
and it I think still to this day has an illustrated cover every week,
Oh wow.
and
What's it called?
because it's called the Peak, Pique, um, and it's just kind of like this local resort newspaper. Um, and so, even though he was a designer and art director, he also had to illustrate the covers. And I would just see him like painting the covers and laying out the magazine every week
Wow.
and being like, can I come and hang out at the studio?
Yeah.
It just immediately reignited that thing in me of
Yeah.
like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I'd visited some other friends from America around that time who, had gone and studied fine art at their colleges in Pennsylvania and
Hmm.
New York. And it just, as soon as I walked back into an art department at a university, I was like, this is this is me. This is what I need to
Yeah.
be doing. So when I came back to Australia, I just kind of, I got a job in a snowboard shop
Hmm.
and just started working towards like restudying and working my way back into doing what I probably always should have done. And
Yeah.
and funnily enough, Richard, who was my roommate in Whistler, he'd moved back as well. He'd become a head teacher at one of the big design colleges in Sydney, and sort of he gave me some direction and
Yeah.
told me how to apply, and I got in and then did ad school and all of that sort of stuff and
Wow.
got a job, just a really junior job in a pretty average creative agency, and it all went from there. So
Okay.
yeah.
And so, like, during that time, did you start to do stuff on the side too? Where, I mean, most people know your artwork, I think, outside of the artwork that you're using to service True Grit, I think most people know you as, somebody who does, uh, you know, band posters. How did that kind of come into your view, for your career? And
That probably
was that kind of like mixed in? Like, in
that
other words,
probably
was
took
that,
a while.
it did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, my goal in those early days was to somehow get a job in the snowboarding industry. Like if I could just design snowboard graphics for a living, I would have been
Right.
stoked. And so a lot of the work I was doing on the side and my own personal experimental work was for either friends who, I had friends back in Canada who by this stage were working in marketing or sales and creative for snowboarding brand. So I'd be helping them out making, I don't know, like party flyers
Yeah.
or, anything that they needed help with really that where they didn't have a budget for it. I was like, yeah,
Right.
I'll do it. Like, I don't care if I get paid for or not. I just want to like create stuff that
Yeah.
isn't real estate advertising. Um,
And
for
that
the
was mostly
agency.
like just kind of general graphic design, not necessarily adding in kind of any illustration elements to it at that point.
No, there was illustration. Yeah, I mean, I would
Yeah.
like usually they'd give me free reign. Like my another one of my housemates from Canada, who I'm great friends with to this day, Kenny Mack. He at that stage he was a marketing guy for Spy Optic, which is goggle and sunglass brand that was
Okay.
really big in the sort of early millennium.
Yeah.
And so, they would do these like tours around all the ski resorts in Canada. They had this huge bus,
Hmm.
the Spy bus, and they would have DJs and bands play there. So I would do a lot of the flyers and posters for that. And
Nice.
sometimes it would be, like an illustration of the bus or whatever, Most of the
Yeah.
time I was probably just like knocking off Evan Heckox and all the artists at Girl Skateboards. But,
Uh-huh.
I was young and just, I was trying to learn by imitating
Yeah.
other people, I guess, which I'd probably get cancelled for now if Instagram had existed back then. But
Yeah,
um,
that's how, that's kind of the interesting thing is like, I mean, back before social media and the internet and Reddit threads, you know, everybody kind of copied. It was one of the ways that we were able to, you know, learn and kind of pay homage and also, get people to kind of like look at your stuff because it's like, whoa, that's pretty cool, even though it's almost like a direct sort of, replica of maybe something that you were inspired by just by some degree. You know what I mean? It's actually pretty normal back then to do that kind of stuff.
Well, that's how
Uh,
you learn, right? Like, and
yeah,
I think it's still how you learn. You find your influences. You have good taste, but probably not the skills, so you imitate those influences, and
yeah,
then eventually you mash up a whole bunch of those influences and then make them your own. So it's I don't know. I guess the difference is, to these days. Um, you just don't put it on the internet or you don't do it
hmm
for a client.
hmm
That's not sensible, but it's a
yeah,
great way to learn.
yeah,
And I still do it occasionally. I'll find like a comic book panel that I love, and I'm just like, I'm going to redraw this in my own style, because I don't want to sit around and waste an hour of my time coming up with a concept or trying to be
yeah,
inspired. This is great practice, and this is a great way to figure out how I would draw this if it was me doing it.
yeah.
So uh, yeah, that was always a good way to learn. But yeah, I was very fortunate that I kind of just knew people, and also, I also didn't ask permission either. I would like in my spare time. I was like, well, if a portfolio is not going to build itself
hmm
to get the kind of work I want. So I would go and I would make up like my own snowboarding or skateboarding brand or whatever, and just go and build a brand and a bunch of like ads and branding pieces and graphics and stuff around that just to throw in my portfolio so that, if the time came, I could be like, oh, yeah, yeah, I've been working on this. It's my friend starting this brand. I've been helping him out. Like,
Right.
nobody knows. Um,
I hope you're enjoying the episode. These conversations are definitely fun ways for creatives like me to gab about our work, but more importantly, it's another way to archive and keep alive something that is inherently important to what makes us human. So, you following, liking, and sharing the Pencil Pushers podcast is one real way you and I can keep this incredible world alive and thriving. If something in this episode resonates with you, we'd love to hear about it. Leave a comment, share your thoughts, and text this episode to your friends. The Pencil Pushers community continues to grow because listeners like you help spread the word. Thanks for being a part of it. So you're there now. You're starting to develop some skill, leaning into different kinds of mediums, and leaning into kind of like more of the culture that you were really into at the time. Helping your friends out, doing cool posters or flyers, etc. When did things start to really kind of kick into? Because I know eventually you wound up getting an agent. Is that right? Or is that
yeah,
years
yeah.
later at
That
that
was
point?
years later. So
Okay.
in the meantime, I kind of worked for this agency for, I don't know, 4 years or something like that, 5
Yeah.
years maybe, and it was pretty. I learned a lot, but it was pretty dull work.
Hmm.
But I worked my way up to like art directing, some really, some pretty high budget stuff, and got to make a lot of really beautiful design catalogs for a lot of architecture and property development clients and stuff like that. So it's pretty
Right.
dull stuff, but
Right.
I learned a lot about print production and just sort of a more refined design style in general. But always had my heart set on working more in that action sports industry. And I sort of got pretty burnt out on that job and decided to go back to Canada for a couple of years. And while I was there, sort of uh, uh, worked semi legally in a freelance capacity. I was working from my Australian freelance business and just
Gotcha.
picking up freelance work wherever I could. None of it
Yeah.
locally in in
Uh-huh.
in Canada, but it was like I started getting work for. I started working with an agency in San Diego actually who did a lot of action sports stuff, and
Okay.
they threw me in the deep end with a bunch of snowboard graphics and stuff for clients of theirs, just like overflow work basically.
And it
Um,
was mostly for products, not necessarily for like ad campaigns and things like that.
It was both. It was
Okay.
both. It was,
Nice.
like some outerwear brands. I'd be doing ad campaigns for them. I'd be doing ad campaigns for like the snowboard parks at different ski areas. So like
Hmm.
Big Bear just outside of LA, North
Mm.
Star Tahoe, bunch of those kinds of clients. And then a lot of snowboard graphics, and eventually some of those became my own direct clients. And
Mm.
I spent probably a solid 5 years where that was like all of my clients were snowboarding. I was hired as creative director of West Beach Apparel, which is a big Canadian snowboard brand. It was sort of like, I guess, the Billabong or Quicksilver of Canada for a really long time. And
Oh, wow. Okay.
um, so I was sort of based in and out of Vancouver for quite a while doing that. Um, and again, that was, these jobs, they're not super well paid, but they're fun to do. And there's a
Hmm.
lot of creative diversity. So one minute I might be laying out a catalog. 3 days later, we're on a shooting next year's ad campaign, and then I'm also designing prints and illustration and all of that sort of stuff for outerwear.
Nice.
So it was a great job. It was really cool. I got to do lots of stuff, and it was kind of, it kept me really in touch with the snowboarding culture, and it was really, I have no complaints about that
Did
time.
what were some of the highlights that you felt like you kind of like learned from that experience?
Uh
Because at this point, it seems to me like you're really kind of dipping your toes in a lot of different ways, right? You're not just designing, you're illustrating, you're art directing, you're traveling, you're helping kind of coordinate probably teams of people to build scenes, products, campaigns, etc. I mean, it seems to me like you're getting a lot of skill and experience at this point, right?
yeah, I think this is kind of a thing with Australian creatives in general as well, because we, even if you work in a really big agency here, you're still going to be expected to have a pretty broad skill set. Like you might be technically, a senior designer who's meant to be mostly doing print or digital or whatever, but at some point you're going to be asked to do, probably a bunch of stuff in After Effects and Premiere
Mm,
and weigh in on a social campaign. And, like you just kind of got to have a pretty broad skill set.
yeah.
And be able to present your work, which is super important. And one of the things that I really got thrown in the deep end of in my first job at the design agency was like, oh, hey, 23-year-old kid, we're going to have you go and stand in front of like a multi-millionaire CEO of a billion-dollar property development company and present your work. Off you go. Good luck. And it just
Wow.
like, I just learned to, like, I still don't consider myself a very confident speaker. I don't like being on camera or, I'm not going to win the charisma Olympics on TikTok, but I definitely can stand in a room with some very wealthy people and sell a design to them and explain my decisions. And that became really important in the snowboard industry because it's not enough to just make something cool and put it in front of people. You've got a lot of stakeholders involved from,
Hmm.
you know, um, heads of sales from multiple territories, heads of marketing from multiple territories, product managers,
Yeah.
CEOs, investors, like
A lot of
everybody.
stakeholders.
A lot of people have an opinion,
Yeah.
and you got to be able to dot your T's and cross your I's, as they say.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, stay there for a second. I'm curious because I'm sure that, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be listening to this for a variety of reasons. And, just from sort of a professional experience standpoint, you were talking about how you really didn't have much of a problem getting in a room with a bunch of people with a lot of power and presenting your work and in a way, basically kind of pitching it. What are the kind of skill sets you think that you had inherently? And if you didn't have them, what were the things that you used to kind of develop in order to build that confidence for other people that might be listening and trying to figure out how they navigate those kinds of things?
um, Delusion. Delusion is an underrated skill. As a young creative, um, I think maybe not everybody, but for me, I was just completely delusional about my abilities, um, and I don't mean this in a fake it till you make it way, because I think a
Okay,
lot
I was
that
about to ask.
particularly you know in late stage capitalist America. I think that shit has gone way too far. Um, but I do think as a creative, while you're young, you actually are going to be delusional, and you are going to have a little bit of
Yeah.
arrogance about you, and a lot of hunger. And I think that you actually lose that a little bit as you get older. As you get older and more experienced, you start to realize how little you know. But when
Mm,
you're straight out of college or whatever, or, in your first job, you just have this like, it's not arrogance. It's just like a hunger and a fire to learn more, do more, get your hands on any interesting brief you can. And if you don't have that, I actually think you're probably in the wrong business.
hmm.
Um, and I think that's actually just what got me through those times.
Mm,
Like, what else is going to give you the energy to go and, I don't know, like work on work on your friends like streetwear startup on the
yeah.
side at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night, a few nights a week. Like, you're not going to do that without being delusional about how, sensible it is, or about um your ability to kind of keep up that kind of energy. I
Yeah.
don't know. Like,
Yeah.
that's what got me through.
Yeah, I definitely think that there are definitely some people like you who, when they're younger, they have that automatic sort of delusional confidence. For me, I think my confidence built over the years. I always felt inferior to the 50-year-olds in the room when I was, in my 20s, 30s. Not until I touched 40 did I start to feel like I was worthy of having conversations with people who had decades of experience beyond me.
Mm.
Um, but I definitely understand that personality as well. But for me, I am in the same camp of doing that at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning for my friends poster for their band that's going to be playing, but the stakes were so low. They were people that were my peers. They were the same age as
totally.
me, you know? And I didn't know well enough whether or not it was good. I just knew that my friend appreciated enough to ask me to do it. But there's something inside you, which is interesting that you know, it's that delusional confidence that I think is pretty fascinating.
I mean, I still see that sometimes from, probably jumping ahead a little bit here, but, you know, well, like, you know, through Kindred Studio, but also through True Grit, you know, we get, you know, young artists who submit their work all the time, either seeking internship or employment or just like collaborating with True Grit, and it takes a lot of confidence, and a lot of like, not necessarily even confidence, but just delusion, just like, well, I'm going to shoot my shot, and I think if you, you know, having that ability to not let the knockbacks or the no callbacks get you down, then I think that's really, really helpful. Because if you actually think too hard about the likelihood of success in those scenarios, I think you'd never get out of bed. And you wouldn't shoot your shot. And I certainly did. I sent some embarrassing emails to creative directors at Burton Snowboards and the Designers Republic, and you know, you name a top design studio of that era, and I would have sent them my portfolio without having any good reason to. But you know, it's, you got to get your name out there, and eventually, like, somebody sees something in your work, and
did you have that vision back then too? Like, oh, I gotta shoot my shot, and you know, eventually it's gonna catch fire. Did you have that confidence as well, that you just had this feeling that it was gonna get to the point?
No, I just had delusion.
Yeah.
That's all I had. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that I had to do it, if that makes sense. Like, I wasn't,
absolutely.
every time I was about to send that email, I wasn't like, all right, this is my shot. Like, you know, this might not go well, but you just got to keep pushing through and keep sending these things out. I was just like, oh, this is a company I want to work for, and I have the arrogance to think that I can do it better than they're doing, or that I can add something to their, you know, stable of creatives or whatever. So I would send my stuff off, and I hate to think of what the response was sometimes. But, you know, like, at times it also worked out. Like, I, you know, became, you know, friends with, or considered myself like a colleague of, people who were way more experienced than me, that saw something in me, and they'd just be happy to have a chat and be like, you know, we don't have anything, but like, we can see you're like, you know, you're going somewhere. If you ever want to have a chat about industry stuff or want to run something by us, they would. You know, the guys at Nemo, I've completely forgotten who was the head of creative, or the creative director at Nemo at the time, but yeah, like, they were really helpful to me, and like, there was a bunch of sort of really established agencies that did lots of action sports and youth culture work, that were like so kind to me back in the day, even though I wasn't like fully formed yet. They were like, yeah, cool, you're into what we're into. Like, you've talked to Dan from Lincoln before. Like, I think that's Dan's vibe, you know, like,
for sure.
And I'm pretty sure back in the day, I reached out to Dan because he was designing a lot of skateboards at Element at the time, and I was just like, I want to do what you do. And so, you know,
oh, really?
I think, you know, I would email him and ask him for advice and stuff like that. And, you know, I think like making relationships like that with like-minded people is a really smart thing to do, and a good way to build confidence too, because you get to learn that, like, well, if these people who have more experience than me, or are doing things that I want to do, will eventually give me the time of day, then it's maybe helpful.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I do this podcast, because it's one part, you know, wanting to add to the tapestry of communication between, you know, the thread of all these creatives that are out there that are doing handcrafted work, But also I learned so much from the conversations that I have from people that I look up to, or, are my peers in some way,
Mm.
I think it's invaluable, actually. Jumping to, because I do want to get to True Grit, obviously, and I don't want to keep you here all day. When did your kind of signature style really kind of emerge, and in maybe in tandem, when did things really start to kind of fire off with, like, you know, where you got that first really big client for the work that you're mostly known for now?
It took a while. I mean, like, the global financial crisis really killed the snowboard industry and skateboarding industry. So, those budgets really shrank. And I
Wow.
was like, okay,
Yeah.
I gotta, and also like, I was like, hmm, yeah, I don't want to be 40 years old and making this kind of money, like it's not unless you're working for, unless you're a creative director at Burton, you're probably not going to make an amazing living out of
Yeah.
that. And,
Do you mind me asking about what the range was around that time for you?
I mean, man, I think like even as creative director at West Beach, and granted, this is 2015, 15 to 20 years ago, I was
Hmm.
probably making like, 60,000 a year
Right. Right.
doing that. Um, but I had time to work for other clients on the side, so I wasn't destitute. I
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
other freelance clients as well, and um, but yeah, as those budgets started to halve, and like I kind of got sick of the travel, and I blew my knee out snowboarding, and I was like, man, like
Yeah.
this lifestyle's like maybe I should hang out in Sydney more and surf and take it easy. So yeah, I was like, I actually, for the first time, I was sort of, no, the second time I made a really concerted effort. I was like, right, I want to do more. I'm going to kind of focus on doing more, capital D design work
Yeah.
for non-action sports clients, but maybe start pushing more into music but, like high design, but also start dabbling in a bit of illustration and editorial and stuff like that as well, because I had a love for that. And it was very much part of my skill set. And yeah, I just kind of did a bit of both of that for a few years, and then eventually
Were you using
started.
traditional tools at that point,
Yeah,
as in terms of illustration? Yeah.
definitely in terms of illustration.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I had like like a basic Wacom tablet, like
Hmm.
not a display, just
Hmm.
a pen, like a stylus tablet.
Yeah. A
But
little
yeah, I
tablet. Yeah.
wasn't,
That.
I, I was hand inking everything,
Yeah.
tracing paper, light box,
Yeah.
pen and brush. I wasn't very good at it, but I was doing it.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and, yeah, just slowly, I don't know, I started like, again, like, people started to see something in my work, and, I really loved working, having this real kind of printmaking aesthetic to my work, a lot of halftones, a lot of sort of grungy textures and
Hmm.
um, that kind of thing. And I don't know if it was just that aesthetic was kind of on point at the time, but, I started getting magazines and bands hit me up to, um, create stuff for them, and it started snowballing from there. And
Mm.
um,
So you said, what was the instigator that got those calls to start coming in?
I don't really know. I think just like, I mean, probably just
Like,
like
were you on?
having,
So yeah, was there
yeah,
even
having
social
having the
media?
portfolio, being on. I mean, this was probably pre-Instagram,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was kind of, my work and my portfolio was getting reposted by pretty big design blogs like Design is Kinky. And in Australia, we had a design platform called Oz In Front, which was pretty big. And I don't know, there was probably others I can't even think, like Grain Edit and that kind of thing. So, my work was kind of aesthetically in a place that it kind of fit into some specific areas.
Yeah. Was
And
that strategic at all, just from a business standpoint, or was it just like it just kind of happened to
No, it
to
just kind of
be
happened. I mean, I
in the
was just
zeitgeist?
stoked. I mean, I
Yeah,
probably had it in the back of my mind, like, oh, it'd be so cool to get featured on Design is Kinky.
sure.
But you know, I'm still astounded that it ever happened.
Yeah.
Um, I guess today it would be like, if being featured in it's nice that,
Mhm.
um, or uh, creative review or creative boom or one of
Mhm.
those kind of platforms. So
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that was kind of what drove it at the time. There was a lot more client discovery happening on Dribble and platforms like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just started gravitating more and more towards doing more illustration and kind of like print making, designy stuff, more screen printed type work. I started this little side project called Improbable Jams where I would ask people in pretty well known bands or well known music journalists or whoever, just people I admired, like if you could create a super group, who would be in that super group and what would you call them? And then I would go and create a gig poster
Oh,
for
that's
that
so
fictitious
smart.
super group. And I never really followed through on it. That I had grand plans to do like a full screen printed show for it, and
Mhm.
it just the cost of actually, um, you know, printing the prints and the fact that nobody would essentially ever buy the prints. They had
Right.
no, like I'm not going to spend like $400 per run of prints for like
Right.
20 different
Right.
fictitious
And
bands.
400 hours,
Yeah,
400
just
hours
nobody's
and
going to buy those.
$400.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I also I didn't want to do digital prints either because I was very much about, like this should be authentic. Like this has a gig screen printed gig poster aesthetic, and it would be weird to do this digitally.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, I think that was wrong. I should have gone and done a show, and done really nice giclée prints and just been happy with that. But, I had the doubting menace in the back of my mind, like, oh, that's not keeping it real. And,
Right.
what about this person on the internet that doesn't know who you are? What would they think? And all of that stupid bullshit. So I probably should have done it, but it got enough traction in design blogs and in a few print publications that I think that kind of I started getting noticed. And I think that's actually how I got on the radar of Jeremy at Jackie Winter, the illustration agency who still represent me today.
Okay.
Jeremy, he gave me his super group, and I created a poster, and it was just, I wasn't yet fully formed enough that he was going to represent me, but it started that relationship where
Right.
I was on his radar and he could see something in me, and he would give me advice on which direction I could push my work in, and in which ways it might be commercially viable as an illustrator. And yeah, it kind of
Nice.
worked out well, and I'm still rep by them to this day. So
Wow. Wow. And I think eventually it got to the point where you started developing um these digital assets that you were kind of building, physically, scanning them. And that was mostly, I think, to service your work, right? So that you could
yeah,
still
100%.
kind of combining using, now you're starting to get into, more digital, but you're applying these kind of grunge effects to it to get that aesthetic that you've loved since your childhood. Um, is it was it at this time where you were starting to, I know eventually you got to Creative Market, which was kind of maybe a pretty big jumping point for where True Grit sort of started, I think, right?
Mhm.
How did that sort of leapfrogging scenario happen for you?
It kind of began with Skillshare approached me through
It was
Jackie
Skillshare.
Winter, my
Okay.
agent, and they were just like, "Hey, like, we like your work. We'd love you to put together a tutorial on a
Yeah.
subject of your choice." And I was kind of like, "Oh, it's nice to be asked." And they're like, we'll throw some promotional weight behind it. We'll help you out. We're not gonna, it's not a Jessica Hirsch or Aaron Draplin situation where we're going to send a production team to Australia and help you make it. But if you make it, we'll put it in our newsletter and see what the audience think. Or
Okay.
you're not going to be on your own trying to promote it.
Okay.
And I don't know. I just realized like I had this whole skill set of how to make like all these little tricks in my back pocket of how to make your own handmade textures and then digitize them and process them. And I thought like, I searched high and low on Skillshare and nobody was teaching that stuff. And yeah, I put it together. It was a lot of work. It was like a bit risky because it was like, man, this is like 2 or 3 weeks of not being able to take on any client work.
While you're
Um,
preparing.
yeah, and the class could fall flat on its face, and I've
Right.
done all of this work for nothing. My friend Daniel, who is was an advertising director at the time, he helped me produce it. He now works with me in house at True Grit, helping
Okay.
produce all of our video content. So
Yeah.
it's kind of funny how things work out. But yeah, the class took off. Like it struck a nerve and it was really successful. Skillshare produced this little cut down edit of the trailer that at one point had 30 million views on Facebook, which
Wow.
back when 30 million views actually meant something.
Right.
It wasn't just 30 million people scrolling past it. It was like 30 million people. Actually, it
Yeah.
might have even been like 30 million likes. It was
Yeah.
wild. I had like
Yeah.
random relatives who would see it and being like, "Oh my god, you're
Andrew,
famous."
Andrew, 30 million is still a lot for
Is
a
it?
lot of
Okay.
people.
Right. Okay. Anyway. But yeah, it took off and like eventually a lot of students, and even just non-students around me were like, have you thought of like putting together some of your private stash of textures and selling them? Like people are doing that. Um, and I was like, that's actually a pretty good idea because the stuff that was on Creative Market at the time, in my opinion, was just
Hmm.
absolute garbage
Hmm.
and largely put together by opportunists, not necessarily skilled creatives.
Right.
And so, in a sense, I don't know if you're a Curb Your Enthusiasm fan, but it was True Grit was a little bit of it was a spite store. Um, it was like these guys next door, like Mocha Joe,
Right.
or these weirdos on Creative Market. They're not doing a good job, and I think I can do a better job. Which
Right.
was again probably where the delusion and arrogance
Yeah.
comes in.
Now that I definitely can identify with for sure. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it actually like I mean, I had no plans of putting it on Creative Market. I was just like in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, I'd be stoked if if I applied to put my stuff on Creative Market and they accepted it,
Hmm.
which they did. But I kind of had the foresight to um, create a brand around it and register my own domain, set up a Shopify store, and kind of sell it independently and own my own mail list. And that was, I knew enough about business and marketing that relying on somebody else's platform was not
Yeah.
the way to go. Um, so yeah,
That's
it was
incredible
pretty.
too, how in the years past where we were just talking about how you had um, gained all this experience, art directing, illustrating, designing, and maybe even booking contractors, creative contractors to help out, kind of building things for products and different businesses. It's almost like it was so seemingly, it seems to me like it was very informative to how you then started to become, um, you know, developed this new business and you were able to kind of like use those elements to help you sort of think through the business aspect of it, the marketing aspect of it, the building of products and how to frame it so that it's attractive to people.
Yeah, 100%. I think if I hadn't worked in um, snowboarding or skateboarding or music or even in advertising, it True Grit probably wouldn't exist. I wouldn't have been
Yeah.
given the opportunities to flex all those different design and business skill sets that you kind of
Yeah.
need to have in order to create something like that.
Yeah.
Even to the point of being like, oh yeah, I'll build my own website. Why not?
Hmm.
Because it's not the first time I've been asked to do something that is not really necessarily my direct skill set, but I can have a go at.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it informed definitely my like skateboarding and snowboarding background
Mm.
informed the tone and maybe the the strategy of the business early on,
Hmm.
in the sense that I just wanted to make stuff that was kind of authentic and kind of kept it real for the right people, for
Yeah.
lack of a better description.
Yeah.
um
I
yeah.
I know, I'm pretty sure that I heard, and maybe if I could have about 10 or 15 more minutes with you, I'm curious about, where you stand now, because I'm pretty sure I heard in another interview that, it's you're very selective about the work that you do with illustration and design now, as you're focusing a lot more on the True Grit brand. Um, do you like tell me about where that sits for you? I mean, is it just that you've lost the desire to do illustration work, or is it just that True Grit sort of superseded your passion? Like you've once kind of taken over in terms of where you get your creative juices from right now. Like, where do you sit with that? Are you hoping to maybe do more illustration work, or are you just kind of happy to kind of very selectively do projects now?
uh
Because you're so good at it, man.
um,
And I realize that there's a lot of work involved there, but there's a lot of work involved in doing the True Grit brand as well.
mm, yeah, I mean, it's a bit of column A, a bit of column B. I True Grit grew and was successful beyond my wildest expectations. So, when I first started, I was like, look, I just hope I can pay my studio rent by
Yeah.
doing this. Like, if I can't pay at least 1 month of studio rent off all the time I put into this, I'm going to be devastated. And to my surprise, it was a lot more successful than that straight off the bat. I was like paying my studio rent and a little bit of my home rent every month for
Yeah.
the first few months, and I was like, wow, there's something in this. And it turns out I really enjoyed doing it. It was a different kind of outlet. Um, I enjoyed creating something that my peers could enjoy, that wasn't
Hmm.
just surface level, like, oh, you created this really cool piece of work that I enjoyed on Instagram for 3 seconds until my goldfish brain forgot that it even exists.
Right.
So something that's a little bit more like weirdly longer lasting. And
Yeah.
it's nice the thought that some of my favorite artists in the world are using something that I made on a daily basis.
Hmm.
And maybe the idea that my business is in the back of their mind every day even is
Hmm.
is kind of weird.
Yeah.
And
Do you,
nice.
yeah. Do you feel that in some ways I wouldn't want to say go as far to say as like your art, but your craftsmanship, there's a piece of your craftsmanship in thousands of people's works now at this point, right? I mean, is that presumptuous? Is that, you know, um, incorrect? But is that, you know what I mean? Is there an element of that too, or
I mean, yeah, look, I think like, the goal of the tools that I make is to make artists' lives easier, to just kind of streamline some of their processes without
yes,
taking away the craftsmanship.
100%,
Um,
yeah,
you know, I'm not about, and I've never been about this idea that the brush can do it for you. And
absolutely,
there's always some weirdo with like, an American Eagle avatar on Instagram who loves to say, oh, why don't you just learn to draw properly rather than using
Yeah,
drawing
yeah,
on an iPad? And it's just like, okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Thanks for stopping by. Um, I've always wanted to make tools that empower the artist, not like do the work for them. And the reality is, like, you can create the best inking brush in the world, but if you are out of practice, like I am sometimes, or you just, you haven't developed your skill yet, it's not going to magically make you draw like Wallace Wood or
Right.
one of the great illustrators of all
Yeah,
time.
Daniel
Uh,
Clowes or anything like that. Yeah.
Totally, 100%.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, there's kind of that. It is yeah. I'm uneasy saying that it's a big part of anyone's craftsmanship, but it plays a part. Whenever we obviously post the work of some of the artists that use True Grit tools on Instagram or do collaborations with them, and I'm always really conscious of I write all the captions, so it's never um I don't know, this work made thanks to the rusty nib brush. It's like that's such an overstatement of the role that the brushes have played in somebody's talent. It's kind of like, yeah, with a little bit of help from these brushes or whatever,
Right.
So
Yeah.
um, I'm always pleasantly surprised by how thankful artists are for the tools I make, and it's really nice when people send me thank you notes just saying, look, I love this brush or I love that, or you've done amazing work on these, but it's the brush can't do the work for you.
No, no. I can say that, from as I've moved into being an illustrator that's mostly working in at least the finishing of the work in using digital tools, Procreate, True Grit, the Apple Pencil. Uh, I, I actually have to say, as weird as it is, and I'm saying weird because I don't really know the reason why necessarily, but I feel like I've actually become a better artist because of that, because of those tools. And I don't really know why, and the reason I'm saying that is because now I feel like, um, even when I'm working traditionally, I feel like my work has gotten better somehow
Okay.
because of working digitally with those tools.
Mm,
And again, I say weirdly because I really don't know why that is. I just know that that's definitely the case. But it absolutely makes it incredibly fun to have all those tools like on my iPad tablet to be able to just like experiment, make mistakes, and explore new areas that I've never done before, which is incredible.
yeah. Yeah.
As I
I think it
Mhm.
also like allows you to try things that, if you had to go and spend $150 on Copic markers, then you probably wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
But a $20 brush set, you can go and explore like a new style for a client or just for your own, personal creative growth. I think it's pretty fun in that way. And,
yeah,
some of the tools are like 100% designed to allow us to replicate aesthetics that are physically not attainable anymore. The
mhm,
the equipment to create them does not exist.
mhm.
I mean, even halftone brushes. If you can find like halftone dry transfer sheets, like good luck to you. Like those things
Yeah,
are expensive and pretty hard to work with and hard to find. So, and then if you level that up even more into like the sort of vintage comic aesthetic, nobody's got a
mhm.
rotary press. Nobody's printing on newsprint. Nobody's got like craft tint multicolor color systems
Yeah,
and all of the bromide cameras you would like that stuff just does not exist
yeah,
anymore. So
yeah,
if you're into that aesthetic, which many of us are, there's you got to learn how to replicate it digitally.
yeah. How uh how many people do you have on your team right now?
Three.
You have 3.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot
Yeah.
smaller than what people. would expect.
Yeah, and are you doing most of the kind of craftsmanship of it, of the development of it as well still, or
Yeah, most of it. Most of
yeah.
it. Like Alex, who is sort of, you know, does a bit of design assistant, community manager, he does like so much stuff. But
Mhm.
he helps with building the tools a lot of the time as
Wow.
well. So it just depends on the tool really.
Yeah.
A
Where
lot of it is honestly just trial and error and a lot of, understanding of how brush engines work and
yeah.
that kind of thing.
Where do you hope to see, True Grit in about 10 to 15 years?
Oof, I don't know, still alive. that's my that's my hope. I mean, I just hope that, the tech bros aren't right and that um AI isn't this inevitable end of human work that they all desperately want it to be. And I think as humans, we're all too smart for that. I think we see the way this is going, and it's pretty telling that, you know, I think like the language around AI and even the way some of these AI companies or just tech companies in general
Mhm.
are talking about AI, now compared to 6 months ago has changed quite a lot.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
Um,
I think it's yeah,
sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, I think this has a lot to do with how, uh, um, the the voice of the people in the zeitgeist has really been, thankfully, resoundingly, anti-AI, which I think is quite telling. You see all these commencement speeches that are happening with all these, like, tech people, thinking that they're gonna get all the students to cheer the innovation of AI, and getting all these boos, I think is going to be has been a huge shift in the conversation and the way that they talk about it now.
Yeah, 100%. People are super wary of it, and it's like billionaires telling us that they're gonna like change the world and everyone's just gonna lead this life of leisure is just like bonkers on
Yeah,
the surface of it. Like it doesn't take a genius to figure out that that is just pure snake oil. And
yeah,
I think like the average person has come to realize that these tools exist based on one of the most brazen mass thefts that's ever occurred.
yeah.
And that mass theft exists only to redistribute the wealth of the very, or, replace the very people that intellectual property has been stolen from.
Hmm.
It's totally crazy.
Hmm.
Um,
Are you
and
talking as you talk to? I'm sure lots of top creatives through the work of True Grit. Are you seeing a lot of? I'm curious to see what the temperature you've kind of felt from a lot of your peers and a lot of the top creatives out there right now, because I've certainly had plenty of conversations about AI on the podcast with a lot of John Contino and Dan, and I mean, for the past year and a half, 2 years, we've been having these conversations almost every episode.
oh my god, like John Contino and I think our only communication these days on Instagram is just like laughing at AI bros
Hmm.
through, through the exchange of like anti AI memes.
Yeah,
Um, Yeah, look, it's the vibe I get ranges from like a lot of fear and anxiety in the industry. I'm not going to lie, like that's a very real thing. I feel it. I think we all feel it. It's very difficult to have a conversation
yeah,
in the creative world at the moment without it inevitably turning to AI. I'm pretty sure in our studio that I railroad conversations with like AI doomerism pretty regularly. Um, sorry, guys. If any of you are silly enough to watch this. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, I just think like abject hatred is the prevailing attitude
yeah,
within, our customer base. And,
yeah.
I've not
But
been
what about from
afraid.
the standpoint of are they seeing the effects of it in terms of how people are, uh, um, asking for lesser prices, or things of that nature? Like, oh well, we can we've collected all the things that we need. Here's our mood boards. Here's our sketches of, because we've certainly gotten some of that ourselves,
Yep. Yep.
and thankfully I don't think any clients are going to be listening to this conversation, but certainly had those conversations where they bring chat GPT inspo logos that they want us to kind of build things off of or
Yep.
be inspired by.
Yep. Yeah. They think they're saving time. It's just like, it's actually just making it the job
Noisier.
more difficult. Yeah. Noisier. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, look, I've heard anecdotally, I've heard a few stories of people losing work. One of our team, very specifically lost work to AI, on a client project that he works on yearly. And only to have that client come back, 18 months later and be like, yeah, look, we've changed hands. Like the company's been sold and we're ditching all the AI bullshit that the last
Wow.
people were doing. Can you fix this? Like we want you to start working with us again. So, there's
Beautiful.
that as well. Like I think it's all balancing out. I have heard stories from, younger customers who are like, I've lost all my work to AI. Because AI can do a better job of the aesthetic that I work in than I can, and it's kind of like, well, I don't know. Did you want those clients anyway? Like that's kind of, I think, we. I don't know. This is not a time to necessarily sit back and just kind of
Sit idly down.
sit idly down and just create average work as well. I think if you're like, it's kind of like Fiverr in a way, like there was a lot of people saying that Fiverr was going to be the end of design, or even Canva
Right.
hasn't hurt design at all.
Yeah.
Like if you were in the business of churning out $25 logos a day, sure, you probably lost some business. But if you've gotten to a skill level and you've positioned yourself to, work for more established clients, then I think those established clients are very wary of using AI.
Yeah.
And some of them have probably even dabbled in it and been burnt by it.
Right.
Um,
Plus, I think there's like copywriting issues too, right? Isn't there some there's some legal issues? Yeah.
Huge copyright issues. Yeah. And I think my biggest concern is I hear a lot of stuff in, from agency land where mid-weight art directors and designers are being forced to use AI to do the work that junior designers would have done.
Right.
So that young guy, young, delusional 23-year-old Andrew straight out of college who was throwing together pitch decks and stuff like that, that's all being automated now.
Yeah.
And that to me is a huge problem.
Right.
Because when that midweight designer becomes senior and eventually gets burnt out by the industry and moves on to doing something else, who's going to come in behind them and replace them?
Right.
So I think we could see a time in the not too distant future where there's actually like a real glut of talent in the industry. And I don't believe that AI will ever be able to replace that. I don't think AI is very good at creativity. It's not good at ideas. It can't self-correct. It's really good at analyzing data and crunching numbers and coding things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm as big a hypocrite as anyone. I use Claude sparingly, but somewhat regularly to debug our website, to build little back-end apps that help me do the boring administrative stuff.
Absolutely.
So that I can focus on more creative stuff. I'm not 100% anti-AI if it's done responsibly and in an environmentally friendly way.
Yeah.
But, the way it's going now, honestly, it could disappear tomorrow and I couldn't care less.
Me neither.
It's not gonna kill my business. I'm not reliant on it.
Yep.
It's nice to have in some respects, but I'll never use it in a creative sense.
Yeah.
And we will never repost the work or work with artists who do.
Love it. Yeah. it sounds to me like you're rather encouraged, and it's great to hear that. I definitely think that as long as our voices continue to um, be loud and forceful, especially the ones that are in positions of some power creatively. And it seems to me like a lot of the top creatives out there are really, really sounding the alarm and being firm in their stances. And that doesn't just end with graphic design and illustration. We're also seeing that with artists in film and television, actors who are having issues with this as well. So I'm encouraged. To some degree. I don't doubt the power of a lot of money and influence to continue to advance what is, where the technology is today. But as long as our voices stand up, I'm hopeful that we can at least have a certain amount of people that are going to love having true human made work, which in the end it has all the soul, all of the experience, all of the history behind the person who's actually got their pen, their pencil behind the work. So um, that's the lane I'm trying to get towards anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what other choice do we have than fight back against it, right? Like it's a
Exactly.
propaganda war, but I think the investors and the AI bros are on the losing side here. I think
Yeah.
they're, it's. I think they probably need to wake up and remind themselves every day that you're not going to fill stadiums full of people to watch an AI World Cup.
Yes. Exactly.
The thing that makes sports and creativity special is that a human's behind it, and it takes human sacrifice and effort and lots of mistakes to create something. And I just don't think anybody wants to engage with something that wasn't created that way. Even advertising, people don't want to
Yeah.
engage with advertising in the first place,
Yeah.
but they want to engage with advertising even less that's been created by somebody typing a prompt into a machine.
Exactly.
So yeah,
It's
time
funny.
will tell.
I'm going to do a panel talk in November for NC Comic Con, where I'm going to invite different illustrators and comic book artists to come up on stage, and I'm going to do a talk about some of the fundamental things. Handcrafted work like this is, and for me, who's an illustrator, I think about the hand drawn arts as like one of the primary ways in which we've um, communicated. It's our first language. Drawing is the first language. So these are fundamental things that will never go away. And to try to run away from that is like basically running away from who we are as human beings. So um, it's a fruitless effort, I think, although they're going to put all kinds of money to try and push it the other way. So I'm glad to see your voices on the side that I feel is the right way, brother. And it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for taking the time. I know we were almost 2 hours deep.
That's okay.
Um,
Yeah, no, it's been great talking to you, mate.
yeah, man, been great talking to you as well. And I wish you all the best with True Grit. And hopefully I'll be able to see you continue to do some more amazing illustration work too, because it's really phenomenal stuff. So until next time, brother, I hope to see you soon. Stay warm in your winter season, and we'll talk to you soon.
I will. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
All right, that's it. Thanks for spending time with us. We hope today's conversation inspired you to create something crafty or simply appreciate the incredible work done by these incredible artists. If you enjoyed the conversation, please share it with anyone who appreciates the amazing world of the hand-drawn arts. I mean, come on, who doesn't love this stuff? And don't be a stranger. Leave a comment. Send us a message. Maybe you have someone you'd like to have on the podcast. Let us know. Point is, your voice matters, and we want to hear from you. So that's it. Until next time, keep making, keep drawing, and keep pushing.